Steel Wool Studios has given us a ton of information about the long-awaited Ruin DLC in the past few weeks, with them saying the DLC could even be releasing earlier than expected, along with a little bit of classic FNAF controversy and huge FNAF movie news. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is that the FNAF movie officially has a filming location. More specifically, in an article, we get a lot of leaks about the movie, including confirmation that the film is called literally just Five Nights at Freddy's, and we also know for sure that the film is going to be shot in New Orleans, which doesn't necessarily tell us much about the movie, but we can also see that the movie is being filmed on February 1st officially, so we can actually be expecting this movie to be completed sometime in the near future. Also, this article starts talking about a company called Bad Cupcake, which is supposedly a new company Blumhouse made just for this movie, but I'm not 100% sure. The next thing I want to talk about is the Steel Wool Studios interview that was done on GameJolt in the past week. Now, for the most part, this interview was more about the actual development process of Security Breach rather than giving any progress updates, but we did get a couple of insights into the future of FNAF. The first notable thing they said in the interview was that apparently there's an Easter egg in Security Breach that has still to this day never been found.
What's your favorite Easter egg that you hid in Security Breach?
I would say I have a favorite, but no one's found it yet.
This is some insane news because it means even with how much Security Breach has been dissected inwards and out, there's still more to discover. They also told us while they couldn't reveal much in this specific interview about Ruin DLC, they are supposedly going for a scarier, more darker vibe with this brand new DLC, which is something I'm really looking forward to. And what's also weird is if you watch my last video, they changed a lot of the images on the Security Breach Steam page, making people think there was going to be some sort of Halloween update or something in the near future. But while the chat during this Steel Wool interview was going crazy begging for some sort of update on these new changes, the developers ignored addressing these new changes entirely. And I don't know if that means they aren't saying anything because something is coming soon, or if they're not saying anything because they aren't working on anything at all, but it was weird that they didn't clarify it at all in their 50-minute long interview. But Halloween is long past and there was nothing mentioned, so I guess it is what it is for now. But in general, this was a pretty cool interview to say the least, even if we didn't get as much info as we were probably hoping for. But the next thing we need to talk about is a little bit of FNAF controversy revolving around the main man himself, MatPat. So as I'm sure you guys know, MatPat has been responsible with uncovering tons of FNAF secrets while also causing some controversy in them, especially in his newest FNAF theory video where he predicted the first few games never even existed, which is a whole nother video topic in and of itself. But anyway, people started to point out that in a video made by MatPat himself a few months back, he uncovered that some game company who he didn't name emailed him jokingly asking if he knew somebody working on one of their games with how accurate his theories apparently were with the title before it ever even released. And while he doesn't say which game company or game he's talking about, he's pretty clearly talking about Security Breach. And what's interesting is that he goes on later in this video saying that the supposed unnamed game came out feeling rushed and was changed a lot by release.
Then the game came out, and it was nothing like our theory had predicted. It also seemed rushed and a bit unpolished, like a lot had been changed in the game last minute.
And essentially, with this being said, after this video's release, people started to theorize that by some chance, MatPat may have actually solved the Security Breach lore in his earlier videos, and also that Steel Wool may have ended up intentionally changing and cutting a lot of things in Security Breach in order to make the game more unpredictable after watching MatPat's theory videos. Because just in case you live under a rock, Security Breach was heavily criticized for its amount of glitches, and also an overall rushed story with them not even using cinematics for some of the endings. Which, while this may sound a bit crazy, this wouldn't be the first time an indie game has been accused of changing their game to throw off theorists, with games like Bending the Ink Machine being accused for years of directly changing their game after watching MatPat's own theory videos. However, on the other hand, to say that one single video would change an entire franchise's direction is also a pretty dramatic action as well. So I guess it's really up to you watching to determine it yourself. Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the most important lore-filled aspect of Five Nights at Freddy's ever: the pillow pets. Yep, Five Nights at Freddy's is actually releasing pillow pets, and now we have the real official images of them. Overall, they look amazing, and I plan on buying the entire stock. You're welcome to the one person who asked. Anyway, getting more into some serious news, the other day, Steel Wool Studios released a brand new blog post for the first time in literally months, detailing a decent bit about the progression of the Ruin DLC that we have been waiting for a few months now, along with a couple other cool pieces as well for the future of their work with Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole. In the first part of this article, they mostly just talk about how much they've grown their team in the past year or so after Security Breach's release, and I'll leave the article in the description if that's something that interests you. However, eventually they started talking about the Ruin DLC specifically, saying, "Let's talk about Security Breach Ruin. I don't have any gameplay details we're ready to share, but I can talk about where we're at at in development. Pursuant to growing our processes, the Security Breach team spent significant time in a rigorous pre-production process, focusing on streamlining our ability to construct fun, stable gameplay. So far this year, we have delivered on our vertical slice milestone earlier than planned, and are ahead of schedule for a major upcoming development milestone. That vertical slice build was the very first one in my entire career that was a complete, actual VC with functional versions of all the gameplay elements and systems we'd intended to build. Our team is absolutely crushing it, and I couldn't be prouder of them. We're fired up and can't wait to share more with y'all. So basically, what they're saying inside of this paragraph is that not only is the Ruins DLC progression going ahead well, but it seems to be a decent bit ahead of schedule, meaning that hopefully the 2023 release window we have been given since the DLC was first announced could possibly be now referring to early 2023 rather than later. That would be for the best, but I also hope they aren't rushing the new DLC, because that was probably the biggest complaint about the first game, along with, of course, their insane amount of overambition. But I imagine they have hopefully learned from their past mistakes and are working on something that will surely be a lot more playable out of launch than the original build. And it's also worth noting that if they have the concepts and everything down for Ruin and are just in the full-blown development mode right now, this DLC will probably still be a decent bit shorter than the original game, just because they're giving themselves like a year of time to build the game, which in the grand scheme of things isn't all that much. However, what's really interesting is that we've been given multiple different stories about Ruin and its progression within the past couple weeks, and while obviously I doubt this is the case, Ruin DLC could release as early as in the next month and a half, because that's when 2023 starts. So I wonder if we're beginning to reach the real rollout phase of this new DLC. It'll be incredibly cool to see as someone who wasn't really the biggest fan of Security Breach as a whole, if I'm being honest, and hopefully this is an improvement on the original concept. Anyway, the last thing in this article was the announcement that finally Security Breach is going to be coming to Xbox on the 22nd of November, so in just about 8 days. And with how cool and hyped this is, I hope this also means that the game will be coming to other platforms as well, because they expressed reaching out to different platforms as a major interest inside of the article, so that would be really interesting to see play out. However, I don't know if any other consoles could realistically handle it, if we're being honest. Like, the Nintendo Switch can't even run Fall Guys, which says a lot about that. And remember what happened recently after they ported it to Google Stadia? Yeah, I don't know how I feel about other ports, but I digress. Anyway, the final small thing I want to bring up today is that Steelbook Studios is starting to work on other games now. More specifically, with the announcement of the PSVR 2, they are apparently going to be working on Hello Neighbor on VR. So as a little bit of a side note, it's going to be interesting to see if this affects the Ruin DLC's release date at all, because that's going to be coming out here in the next couple months, so I wonder if that's affected Ruin DLC's release date at all. But to conclude, we're getting a bunch of different Ruin DLC teases throughout this past month, and along with movie news, I hope this means that 2023 is going to be a massive year for Five Nights at Freddy's. Anyway, subscribe and peace.